So let's get going. We're going to start with a couple of awards that are traditionally awarded today on graduation day, as opposed to the marvelous awards we did yesterday on class day. This year, I want to start with an award for the Administrator of the Year. Now, we have a fabulous faculty, the absolute heart of the school. We have terrific, obviously, students. But our administrators, led by Jerry Sheehan, are the ones who day to day, minute to minute, year after year, make the school function. So I'm very happy to have instituted an award similar to our Faculty Member of the Year, similar to our Research Award of the Year, to our Best Administrator, someone who has truly gone above and beyond their day-to-day duties to create something remarkable in a given year. This year, I'm very proud to say the Administrator of the Year comes from our MIB program, and it's Kristen Zecchi. And I want to highlight that what she has done above and beyond this year, in addition to doing all the marvelous work she does in the MIB world, is to bring to life the 2U program, which is a new outreach creating an online degree approved by our faculty by an overwhelming vote, approved by our Board of Advisors unanimously, and yesterday approved unanimously by the Tufts Board of Advisors. It's an extraordinary new step for the school into online education. Kristen Zecchi at the heart of that. That's why she's our Administrator of the Year. Kristen. Second award of the day, and this really does get to the very heart of what we are. We are a school of law and diplomacy, but above all, we are a school. That means that our faculty, who do incredible research and incredible service to the school, but above all, they are teachers. Every year, we give an award selected by the student body to the best teacher of that year. And this award, I do want to say, is named for James Paddock, who was a member of this faculty, a much beloved one, who taught in the business curriculum here. And we lost him much too young. He was 49 years old when he passed away. There's a bench named in his honor that overlooks the tennis courts. His spirit is strong today because he valued teaching in and of itself. And I think that's a remarkable example for all who are involved in education. So, because this award is selected by the student body, I'd like to ask Laura Smith, a member of the Student Council, to come up and announce the award. Yep. All right. Malcolm Deggs, great to see you, Laura.
Thank you, Dean Stavridis. Good afternoon, and congrats, class of 2018. We did it. Well, some of us did it. Some of us are still waiting. At Fletcher, we are surrounded by incredible professors who challenge us to think deeply about the world as we strive to acquire new skills. Each professor uniquely contributes to the Fletcher experience and creates a lifelong impact on their students. I am therefore humbled to announce the recipient of this year's Paddock Award for Excellence in Teaching to Professor Alnoor Ebrahim. Professor Ebrahim started his time as a Fletcher professor shortly before many of we graduating students began our journey here. In these 2 years, he has earned a reputation among the student body as thoughtful, intentional, and absolutely brilliant. His classes combine theory and practice, utilizing abstract thinking to develop new opportunities for action. The classroom experience revolves around learning these frameworks and modes of analysis with chances to analyze the consequences of individual and organization actions. Additionally, he creates space for thoughtful listening and respectfully challenging one another. In his leadership, teams, and organizations class, we are also asked to incorporate our personal values into the equation. Professor Ebrahim successfully challenges the status quo for how a classroom is managed and who is considered an expert in the room. He is intentional about participation, highlighting the expertise of students from their previous experiences and providing a platform to work through big questions and big problems together. This intentionality of encouraging participation from all voices is likewise exemplified by his thoughtfulness in responding to students both in and out of the classroom. Professor Ebrahim is generous with his time and acts as a mentor for many in their schoolwork, capstone projects, as well as professionally. When asked about the legacy he wants to leave at Fletcher, Professor Ebrahim noted that he wants students to have the necessary skills, the modes of analysis and thinking required, as well as the courage to work on difficult problems. He emphasizes that this task cannot be achieved alone. This goal further underscores his belief in the necessity to collaborate when solving big problems. And I can assure you that his personal legacy is already felt among his students. When asked to comment about Professor Ebrahim, one student remarked, "He introduced me to the art of the possible." Another replied, "He's the type of person that I want to be when I grow up." He is a brilliant professor and serves as a role model for many students. On our last day of leadership class in the fall, Professor Ebrahim shared with us his journey to Fletcher. He concluded with what has become an often quoted phrase, "Honor the dreams of the ones you love." And today, we as a student body want to honor you and your dreams, Professor. And so I am excited to present this year's Paddock Award to Professor Alnoor Ebrahim.
Thank you. Thank you, class of 2018. Congratulations, class of 2018. Keep in mind, I'm just the warm-up act for Lawrence and Pulkit. I'd like to give a warm welcome to the families and friends of the graduates. A big shout out and thank you to the wonderful faculty and staff here. And a special acknowledgement to my wife, Maria, who is here, who puts up with my craziness when I prepare for class. So, graduates of 2018, I've learned a lot from you in the classroom, and I've learned some unexpected, surprising things from you. So one of those things was I learned the precise definition of what a hipster is. So those of you that are in my class, were in my class on managing NGOs and social enterprises, you'll remember our very first session. We were talking about a company that manufactures eyeglasses. It's a social enterprise, and we were talking about their business model, how they make money, but also their social change model, how they try to make the world a better place. So naturally, at some point in this conversation, I asked the question, so who is their target market? Who are their customers? And I called on a student, and he looks at me and he says, hipsters. Their target market is hipsters. So those of you that know my teaching style know that there was no way I could let this comment slip by. So I looked at him and I said, with all the seriousness that I could muster, "Would you care to define what a hipster is?" And without skipping a beat, he said, "Someone who appears as though they don't care about fashion but is actually obsessed by it." So now you know. Admittedly, I've been a bit nervous about what to say to you on your departing day. In fact, I'm nervous before every class that I teach. So what's a teacher to say when the teaching is done? As faculty, we've done our part. As you go forward from here, you will be your own teachers. And you will be teachers and mentors and coaches to others. And life's lessons will come to you in many unconventional forms. But one of the more common forms will be feedback. Feedback from teams, from supervisors, from coworkers, from peers, from families, from spouses, from friends. So let me spend a few minutes on 3 reflections, 3 insights about how to make the most of feedback. So the first one, feedback can come in the most unlikely forms, but you have to be open to it. So my earliest crystallized memory of feedback, believe it or not, is from the age of 6 or 7. My family and I were immigrants to Toronto, to Canada, from East Africa. Some Canadians in the room here. Immigrants to Toronto from East Africa. I was born in Tanzania. And so when I arrived in Toronto, obviously got registered in school right away. And I remember in first grade, so I think this was a year or 2 after we had arrived, English was not my first language, but you pick it up quickly as a child. It was the last day of school, kind of like today, except that it was first grade. And in celebration, I wore a new pair of shoes that my parents had just bought me. They were shiny, black, beautiful, plastic, kick-ass shoes. They were purchased from a store in Toronto called Honest Ed's. It's a real Toronto institution. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. So imagine a gigantic dollar store, but the size of Macy's. And all sorts of fun, festive stuff that's mostly kitsch. And signs plastered, advertisements all over the walls. Things like, "Honest Ed is for the birds. His prices are cheap, cheap, cheap." Or, "The squirrels are looking for Honest Ed. At his prices, they think he's nuts." So I had these shoes from Honest Ed's that I wore on that last day of school. I was in the bathroom, and a kid in my class, who I hadn't spoken to much, approaches me. And he looks at me, and he looks at my shoes, and he says, "Nice shoes. Where'd you get them?" And so I looked at him, and I said, "I got them from Honest Ed's." And he says, "What?" And so I repeated myself, "I got them from Honest Ed's." And he says, "Oh, you mean Honest Ed's." And he walks away. And as he's walking away, I'm thinking to myself, how long has this kid lived in this country and he still can't speak the language? Feedback. He was trying to give me feedback, but I was not quite ready for it. At least until a couple years later when I started to learn French in school, which is a requirement in Canadian public schools, and realized that practically every H is silent, including for the national sport of hockey. So, first lesson, feedback comes from the most unlikely places, and you have to be ready for it. Second insight, receiving feedback is always hard, but you have to systematically seek it out. When I first started teaching in 1999, the first course I taught was a graduate seminar called Collaborative Governance in Civil Society. Now, during one of the sessions, I introduced a set of techniques to the students called participatory rural appraisal. It's a set of tools, methods created in the developing world to elicit input from rural communities on their development needs and priorities. One student in that first class asked, how can these tools be applied to the classroom? In other words, how can we effectively gather student feedback, both to learn about student priorities and needs, and also to increase accountability between the teacher and the students? So now remember, this was my very first course. My first thought was, is he challenging my authority? Is this what insubordination looks like? And the fact that I looked like a student didn't help matters much. My second thought was, well, what if we try it out? I was a young teacher, pretty inexperienced. What did I know better? So we ran with it. And the basic idea had a profound impact on my teaching style. So today, in all of my classes, midway through the semester, I asked for written feedback on two simple questions. The first is, what's going well that we should continue doing? And the second is, what could be improved, and how would you improve it? Notice it's not enough to complain. You actually have to suggest how things might be improved. Now, there's nothing radical about this, right? A lot of faculty do this. However, I asked my teaching assistant for the class to make all of that feedback available verbatim to the entire class. I don't edit it. They see it pretty much at the same time as I see it. And then I come to class, I pick 2 or 3 of the things that I think I can reasonably do within the course of that semester, and I let go of the rest. Let me tell you, after 19 years of teaching, I still find this to be a painful process. But it has helped me immensely to see the gaps, see the weaknesses, and to improve. So that's the second insight. Receiving feedback is hard, but you have to systematically seek it out. Third and finally, make time to give feedback to yourself. This is harder than it sounds. In our fast-paced lives, it's difficult to create moments of reflection, to touch base with your inner self. Most of us, we typically reflect when there's a life-altering change, loss of a job, a health issue, a death in the family. And it's important to reflect then. But it's also important to find ways of reflecting that are more regular. In my course on leadership that Laura mentioned, one of the assignments is to identify a personal leadership challenge and to make an action plan for the next 6 months to actually address that challenge. I've been blown away by your essays, how courageous you are, how honest you are with yourselves. Some of you observed in those essays that you're conflict averse, and you developed a plan for actually facing conflict. Others observed that you're not very good listeners, and you created a plan for balancing your advocacy with your inquiry. I urge you to create time in your lives for such moments of reflection. It might come through a practice, a run, a regular walk you take, a meditation, a journal entry, coffee with a friend, but make the time. I think this task is harder for your generation than it is for mine. And part of the reason for that is social media. So the instant connection and gratification that social media provides can be wonderful, but I think it makes it harder to find that time. So I'd like to give you one last assignment before you leave Fletcher. Over the next 2 weeks, find a period of 24 hours where you can take a break from technology. No texting, no email, no Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or WhatsApp or Snapchat. The list goes on. See how it feels and see if you can make a regular practice of it. I know someone who calls it their tech Sabbath. If you're Muslim like me, and this is the month of fasting of Ramadan, fasting is a means towards introspection. So think about your tech Sabbath as a means of fasting from technology in order to create space for introspection. Make time to give yourself feedback, to hear what your mind and your heart have to say to yourself. So, Fletcher class of 2018, you are special to me because I started at Fletcher together with you. You are the first graduating class I've seen from the day that you arrived. So before I get super emotional up here, to you and your families and your friends, congratulations.